Welcome to Cinema Grimoire. Hope you survive the experience.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Cinema Grimoire, an exploration of classic goth films. I'm Patrick, and joining me today are my two grim cinemaphiles.
This is JoJo.
Hey, it's Ash.
And welcome to what is officially the first installment of this brand new show on the brand new station for all you can hear. I think this will be a nice, fun journey through the world of goth cinema. And we have a doozy. We have a big one for the first official installment, and that is 1994's Interview with a Vampire.
It's a movie.
Because I did want to lean on Ash a little bit today, because obviously, as our chief goth correspondent, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about what made you want to let this be like a first foray into goth cinema. Like, what about it? This was particular. This has like the gothic themes and moods and things. Sort of like your sort of feelings and the history with the movie, and then we'll sort of get into like our general like review of the movie.
Okay. As far as why I wanted to start here, one, I love vampires. Two, the show just came out, which I'm really excited about. Still have not had a chance to watch it, but I've heard amazing things, so I'm super stoked about that. And as far as why it's a good fit, it's so extra. Like, honestly, like having now seen it, it's the most melodramatic, romantic, ridiculous type of movie, and I feel like that's perfect for goth cinema.
Because I can't think of a vampire story where they weren't just like lugubrious and melodramatic and just generally extra in every regard.
I can think of some, but they're all awful. Like, if you get like vampires in action or vampires in comedy, it immediately goes to shit. So
now hold on, what about the Underworld Files?
Oh dear God, please, can we?
TM.
No, absolutely not.
Hey, we've already done an episode on Underworld. Check that out.
God.
Yeah, go back to our archives on that one. And we still have 4 more?
Jesus
Are there
Christ.
really that many?
There's at least 5 movies and an anime film.
No. Why? No. Those.
Man, in 2003, Underworld was the shit.
Yeah, I know. I was in high school and I could not get away from it. So, yeah. It's a thing.
Kate Beckinsale with guns.
Okay, I
Pew, pew,
mean,
pew, pew.
Kate Beckinsale was the appeal. But beyond that, meh.
I mean, could Lestat shoot a hole in the floor and drop through it fine?
Probably. I mean, by Anne Rice standards, Lestat can do anything.
The perfect OC.
I mean, Lestat has drank the blood of Christ. He's swapped bodies with a human. He's gone to hell at least once. He's apparently gone to Atlantis. He's been an actual saint. There's other stuff that I'm missing.
I was about to say this because you not only familiar with the film, like you've actually read the Anne Rice series
On purpose. Yeah. Yeah, I have. In my defense, I was between the ages of like 13 and 19-ish, so this was before I developed taste. The books are a ride. The books are worth it.
I mean, based off of what this movie was, which apparently is toned down
Significantly.
I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ.
The book is not small. Like, it is a chunk of a book, and most of it is spent describing Spanish moss, the air, and what the houses look like.
Man.
Like, there's purple prose, and then there's that. And it's amazing when you're like 13. It's like the height of literature. And then you get a little older and you're like, what the hell am I reading?
It's like you're definitely being paid by the word here.
Oh, God, yeah.
There's no reason for this much intricacy and nothing.
But, I mean, that's goth. It works. Anne Rice, I don't know. She covers a lot of ground somehow. None of it is... It's not that it's not good. It's messy. And I think that's part of the appeal for me is just how crazy and how messy it gets.
I mean, then we're right there with you because not only are we just a messy show and network in general, but we enjoy seeing people getting sloppy and silly with their stuff. So, like, obviously, the melodrama and just the drama of it all is very appealing. And I will say, like, I felt good to finally watch a movie that was so well known after, like, oh, you always hear about that's one of like the big movies everybody's seen, everybody talked about. to finally be able to sit down and watch it, it's like, okay, I finally checked this off my list. But I think that's what we'll do over the course of this series. It's like there's a lot of like big kind of like horror and horror adjacent films that we have on the docket for this. And I feel like, yes, finally we can I can finally hit those, and I have a excuse to watch them now.
That's fair. So since I've seen the movie a million times and you guys have not, what were your first impressions, especially like coming into it knowing all the hype and the history? And
Joe, do you want to start with this?
I can. Didn't really know much about, other than I knew Anne Rice, vampires, and I heard like some of those books go off the rails, but outside of that, I haven't dipped my toe too much into the Anne Rice oeuvre. But like this, I'm still kind of processing the movie, honestly.
It's
like,
been about a week since we watched it.
Yeah, and it's just like I forget that we watched. I was like, oh yeah, we did watch the movie where Tom Cruise is just an unhinged crazy person. Which I mean,
it's just Tom Cruise.
Just Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Like I feel like this is just Tom Cruise, like all the time.
Probably,
like,
yeah.
Like Tom Cruise unmasked.
Oh God.
Probably not as many frilly shirts, but
and a lot more fish fucking.
Yeah.
Alleged fish fucking. Excuse me.
Yeah, we have to cover our bases here.
Allegedly.
He allegedly fucked a fish multiple times. Multiple fish, multiple times.
Habitual fish. I guess like as far as like some arbitrary number score, I guess like sitting between like a 3 out of 5.
That's
Like
fair.
Like there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm like, that was a direction, but like I guess we'll get into it. But like as far as just like directing, all like the basic like storytelling and like cinematic things, it's very competently done. It's just like some of the writing. I'm like, all right, we're here now.
Story
like,
choices.
But we'll get into that as we go along.
Just like basic first overview of my impressions. Like I like Joe. It's like, oh yeah, there's some interesting stuff here. There's like a lot that I was like, oh, I can see the appeal of like why this was so big for so long. In terms of just like the look, I mean, I like how like kind of moody it is. There's some killer like set designs. I mean, like they really hit a lot of spots really well. I mean, of course, it's almost 30 years old now, so like there's definitely like some creaks and cracks in it in certain places, but like there's still a lot that's like really solid in terms of like production. There's some story choices that are just like this was a certain direction you chose to go on, and I'm sure that as we'll get into might be a deterrent for people who, one, just like reading it or seeing it for the first time, especially like with today, it's definitely just like, what the fuck? But still thought it was like a solid movie. It's definitely a movie that has a certain tempo and it's steady throughout.
Fair.
And there might be a couple like blips in terms of just like kind of, I guess, like action, but like it's a pretty not monotone, but like has a very steady pace.
Yeah, it's very evenly paced. There's not like very many like highs or lows. Yeah.
But like I was like, that's a 3. That's a 3.
3's good. 3's fair, given the movie itself. I am biased because I saw it young and have watched it way too many times since then. I'd probably give it like a 4.
Yeah.
Like a generous 4. It's not. I love it despite itself. Let me put it that way. It's a mess, but I don't know. It's my mess. I love it.
Also, like that's kind of the fun too.
God,
how messy it is.
I mean that's kind of like the conceit of this whole like series. Is like I would say there's definitely some movies we have plotted. It's like, okay, this is like pretty, agreed to be. This is a very solid movie, and whereas others may just like This is just like personal favorites for whatever reason, and that's perfectly fine. This may not be like objectively a 4-star movie, but like to me, its memories and just like the fun I have with it, this is a 4-star, and like that's still a valid reason.
That's fair. Yeah, for the record, on that list, Repo the Genetic Opera is the one that I'm going to tell you right now is a 4 or 5 for me. It is a flaming hot piece of crap. It is the worst movie, and I will not apologize when we get to it because I love it. And also, you have to suffer through Paris Hilton.
Oh, this is the Paris Hilton version.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The only thing I will say, which is either a selling point or a deterrent, is that Paris Hilton is a surprisingly good part of the movie.
Like I heard she was a surprisingly good part in House of Wax.
I mean, she dies well in House of Wax. That's all she has going for her in House of Wax.
Which, like, sidebar, apparently House of Wax is kind of getting like a cultural...
It's so weird to me, but yeah, it's become like a big thing. But
Is that the movie about the wax creatures coming to life? Like the wax statues?
Well...
Like it's in a museum, or am I thinking of a different movie?
So it is a wax museum.
It's like an early 2000s.
Yeah, like mid-2000s.
Chad Michael Murray's in it. Like
Yeah, that sort of era.
Yeah.
Wasn't like the main guy from Cousin Skeeter also in it?
Yeah.
Oh, brain blast.
That's a combination of words
Who
I've
I
not
think
heard
is
in a while.
playing Paris's boyfriend in that, if I remember correctly. And I remember when that movie came out, I was in college, and they actually marketed it as "Come watch Paris Hilton die." Like they leaned into it that heavy because people hated her so much that they were like, "You want to see Paris Hilton get mutilated? Come watch our movie."
Yeah, like I remember like around that time there being like this big hate boner that we all kind of participated. I mean, granted, we were all like young adults or like young children, but like I don't get like why like so much hate in hindsight.
They made themselves pretty insufferable, like as a marketing tactic.
Yeah.
So she leaned into it.
What was that show that her and Nicole Richie
The
did?
Simple Life.
Oh God.
Yeah, she's had to, I know, in recent years, talk about how much of that was a persona. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing.
yeah.
Is they tried to push it so hard as that's how she really was. And I think that's why people were so eager to hate her, is they were like, no, that's really Paris, like, unfiltered.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't until like you said, pretty recently. Like
Yeah.
we all like, and granted, like we were all younger, but like I
God, yeah.
remember at the time thinking, oh yeah, she's just a dumbass.
Yeah. Yeah, she's not that bad, but at the time it was a thing. And even within Repo, like, she's playing almost like a parody of herself.
Yeah.
Because she's like a socialite, she's an heiress, and she's addicted to plastic surgery in this movie. And that's her whole storyline. But it's really surprisingly well done. You do have to deal with her singing. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, there's a musical number. But
I mean, it is a Repo the Genetic Opera.
yeah, I mean, the music is kind of, all of it is kind of a mixed bag. It's fun, though. It's a fun movie, but that definitely tops the list of, like, it's a personal favorite. It's not good. I'm not even going to try to lie and say it's good.
But we're all here for, like, you know, just weird, slocky, like, bullshit that I mean, that's what the fucking network was built on, baby.
I love it.
We'll shine a turd, by God. But I guess we get a little deeper into the movie itself. I guess I feel it's kind of funny to say, in case you've never seen Interview with a Vampire, I guess, what would you say, this is synopsis, Ash. What is the bones of the story about?
Oh, God, you're going to make me do a synopsis. It is the world's longest and most dramatic breakup between two really flamboyantly gay vampires. And also they have a child, which is a nightmare.
Yeah, they find a tiny street child and they make her into a vampire, and then that's when some weirdness really kicks in.
What do you think about the whole Claudia thing? Because I know that's where a lot of people have like a sticking point. Is like,
and like obviously that would make a lot of sense. I will say this was one of the things in some part I knew was in the movie. Like there's a small child character and there's some weird romantic things around there. But what I didn't know was I thought Claudia's character was the one who sired Lestat. I thought he was like obsessed with her because like that's his vampire mom, even though she's like a 5-year-old in the book and a 12-year-old in the movie.
ish, yeah.
But it's actually Lestat forces, this child to be turned into a vampire to keep
Louis
around. And it's like, oh, we'll just be forever because we have a kid now. Because that's a great way to salvage a relationship, is to have a child. Because that never falls apart in real life. It'd probably be more comfortable if it's just like, oh, this is a tiny person who has to live eternity as a tiny person, even though they're no longer a tiny person mentally. Mm-hmm. That's a solid crux for like drama.
Right.
But then when like they start putting like romantic vibes between this child and the grown man, it's like, mentally she's 100 years old, but physically, like, I don't care. We're not doing anime lolicon shit here.
Because that was the thing. I was like, oh wow, fucking Anne Rice invented lolicon in like the fucking 70s. I was like, what? Like that definitely took me aback. But and also anime culture has kind of poisoned my brain. When it's like, oh, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah, it's a thing. It is a big part of the books, and not just that book either. Like the Claudia storyline comes up, and I think at least 2 or 3 others, where it's like they bring her back from the dead at one point as the world's angriest ghost, and she immediately tries to murder everyone, which is fantastic. They find her journals in one book, and like it just makes her sadder. Because, like, the journals really get more into her psyche, and that's really where they do go more into just the, like, I'm an adult in a child's body type of thing. So it's more sympathetic when you get it from her perspective as opposed to, like, Louis and Lestat, where there's weird, creepy sexual tension.
Yeah, and I think, like Pat's saying, it's, like, a kind of a cool, like, story conceit, but, like... Yeah. Like, I think having it more from her perspective would have made it a lot less weird.
That's fair. That's definitely
and plus,
fair.
like, it really just sort of deals with, like, hey, they're stuck like this forever. Because, like, that's a plot point in a movie I know we'll get to later down the line, Near Dark, where there's a child vampire character who has a very similar sort of story arc.
Yeah.
But not that creepy. Oh, it's still creepy, but it's not between, like, a child and an adult.
Actually, from what I've read, Homer is supposed to be older than what you think he is in that movie, too. So he's definitely... It's kind of... It's sus.
It's all weird all around. But, I mean, I can definitely see how for years everybody's just like, oh, wow, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, they're like, just barely almost touching lips and being very, touchy. And, like, obviously, I'm sure the gays back in the day ate this up. And, like...
God, yeah.
And, there's still, like, some nice gay stuff in there, like, gay stuff. But it's, like, I know they had to dance around a lot of it because it being the 90s.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, they're totally okay with this Claudia shit. But, we can only let Brad Pitt kind of almost touch Antonio Banderas' lips.
What's even weirder to talk about, like, just how accepted it was, there are old interviews, and, like, you can find them on YouTube, of them talking to Kirsten Dunst, like, at that age. And they were like, what's it like to kiss Brad Pitt for, like, that brief scene? I'm like, this is a 12-year-old.
Yeah, and it's, like, kind of, like, getting into, like, okay, like, she's actually... 12 years old, IRL, doing these rather challenging, for lack of a better term.
She's amazing in the role. It's just like, you have to remember that is in fact a child. And then even within the interviews, like, there's this weird dichotomy between, like, hey, you're a kid and we're going to treat you like a kid, but also we're going to ask you these weirdly charged adult questions. And they were, like, weirded out when she had a kid's answer, and she's like, it was weird. Brad's my friend. We got to know each other well. Also, his lips are dry. And, like, people were like,
Brad needs some chapstick.
Basically. And, like, grown women were, like, freaking out. Like, I would kill to kiss Brad Pitt. I'm like, you're an adult.
You can't live vicariously through a child.
I mean... They can.
They try.
Look at the Twilight fandom. I mean, that's grown-ass women living vicariously through a teenager.
And speaking of Twilight, because that was definitely my high school. That was, like, the biggest thing and kind of ruined supernatural, just monster stuff for a while. Not to beat that dead horse. But, like, I do like sort of how you can tell this is a progenitor to that. Mm-hmm. And there's still some, like, you can tell how Stephanie Meyer basically stole her whole shtick from Anne Rice. But, like, how, like, this very much still feels like classic gothic vampire stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, like, I do appreciate, because it's sort of embracing, like, old vampire lore, but also, like, it is modernizing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, basically vampires just live really long time that they don't really have like, all these like colorful weaknesses other than just like sunlight essentially.
Yeah.
And I think you do get like a really good sense of just like the weariness that comes from being alive forever. Like there's a line that Antonio Banderas' character Armand says, very few have the stamina to be a vampire, because like he's in the movie he's like one of the oldest and he's 400 years old.
Yeah. The books, they definitely have a lot of much older immortals. There are a couple that are like a couple thousand years old. And one of the things, the book gets a little bit, the series on the whole actually gets a little bit weirder in terms of powers and weaknesses and who can die and who can't. There's a lot of lore.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like a ton of lore. And there's rules, and those rules contradict themselves perpetually. It's a
Hell
lot.
yes.
It's almost as if she didn't plan this out fully.
Fun fact, Anne Rice fired her editor about halfway through the series, which is why there's so many inconsistencies. Is she decided that no one could handle her work better than her. And
It showed.
this is why Lestat loses an eye, and then you never know which eye for the remainder of the series.
Does it flip-flop?
So from what I read, and I don't know how true this is, when they released it initially, I think they said one side. When they released it again in trade paperback, they said the other side. She had edited herself without realizing it.
Damn.
And then later down the line, they called it out so much that she was like, she'd put it in the narrative, but it's weird because it's from Lestat's POV.
Like
So it's
he
like-
can't remember which eye he lost.
He's basically like, you'll never be able to tell which one it is. They're slightly different colors, and that's the only sign. So, like, you'll get other characters who are, like, staring at him on occasion, and you'll get, like, their point of view, and they're like, I wonder which eye it is, and that's pretty much it.
Wow.
Also, that eye went to hell. That is important to note.
Like that's a major plot point.
Like, he's in hell, and he's escaping, and demons rip his eye out, and at first he's like, maybe I imagined this whole experience. Maybe this didn't really happen, and then his, like, eye shows up in the mail, like, from the devil. Like, he's just like, hey, here's your eye back. And
All right.
he basically just, like, uses a little bit of blood and, like, puts it back in. And
Just like
yeah, like I said, the way vampire bodies work in the books, way different. So yeah, a little bit of blood, and he just kind of pops it back into the socket, and it does its thing.
Granted, this motherfucker could not die in this movie. I was like, we saw his face get melted and turn into Raiders of the Lost Ark goo. And then all of a sudden, he just shows back at the end, and
he's lit on fire twice.
he's lit on fire twice, and then comes back and eats Christian Slater.
Yeah.
And Christian Slater may or may not have become a vampire. Who knows? That's the fun, I guess.
But the real question is, does Christian Slater look 25 or 45?
Both.
And
at
how is
all
it
times.
both at the same time?
Because like he had to been, he had to been like.
This is like Broken Arrow.
Yeah, because
Christian
like
Slater.
because we watched Broken Arrow on Caging Greatness, also on the AYCH podcast network. Go back and check that episode on the spinoff of the Caging Greatness show about John Travolta and Broken Arrow being the John Travolta film. But
We got a lot of lore around here.
we have a lot of programming on the AYCH network, as you'll soon find out. But it's just like, wow, he's a young buck in this one. And it's like, but also he just looks like he's just perpetually middle aged.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, I love how Brad Pitt's like literally hundreds of years old at this
Yeah.
point. And somehow he looks younger than Christian Slater.
Honestly, rewatching this movie, it's so weird, like, as I get older, where I'm like, Brad Pitt was really fucking young. Like, when you look at that movie, I'm like, he had a little baby face.
Yeah,
because this was really before he blew up, right? Or like this is one of the movies that made him like more of
Yeah.
a household star.
Yeah.
this is definitely like one of the first big movies of his career, I would say. So this is just post Cool World.
Oh God.
Boo.
What, the family picture?
It's
God.
a family picture.
I hate it.
And him talking to like just like cartoon girl with tits and ass out to here.
God, we need to watch Wizards one day.
JoJo's been threatening me with that movie for years.
It's a movie.
No,
I
I'm
can't
out.
say it's good.
So I think it'd be a good point to talk about, what the whole movie kind of revolves around. We kind of jumped around a little bit. So
Yeah.
this is an interview, but another thing that I had a preconceived notion of ended up being like wrong about. I thought the interview was with Lestat, Tom Cruise's character, but it's not about. It was with Brad Pitt's Louis.
So interestingly enough, with the series, as far as the books go, Interview is the only one from Louis' perspective. And then it switches over to Lestat for the remainder of the series.
Really?
Yeah, so he's the main character in everything but that one. So it's really interesting because even in like the second book, there's a lot of stuff that's revisited. And I don't know if Anne Rice does it deliberately or not. It may be giving her too much credit. But what you end up with are two really inconsistent, unreliable narrators, but in a really fun way.
Yeah.
And it feels more like two sides of a breakup in conversation with one another. Because everything that you hear about Lestat, then he turns around and he's like, Louis is a whiny bitch, and here's why. And literally the whole book is just like, I'm not that much of a monster. He's just really sad all the damn time. And when you get it, even from like other vampires' POVs, because she does jump around a bit. Yeah, I think Louis is just a sad boy. And like, I don't think Lestat's that. I mean, Lestat's pretty bad, but he's not as bad as the book or the movie would make him out to be. Like, he really seems like a villain at times, and he's just kind of an asshole.
But he also, like, or at least how Tom Cruise plays him, he kind of plays him like a Disney villain. Where,
he does.
Where he's just too charismatic for you to really care that he's, like, killing people. It's like, oh, that's funny.
He's very, like, you know, we said it earlier, like, he's very theatrical. He's very, like, bombastic, and the Brad Pitt's character is definitely the more subdued of the two. But and one thing that leads Louis to become a vampire is actually changed from the book. I didn't know because in the movies it says the reason why he wants to die because his wife and child had passed away. Mm-hmm. Which, like, you know, why would you want to turn a vampire if you want to die? Because I know in the book it was his brother that sort of kick-started his, like, road to becoming a vampire, the brother's death.
Yeah, that is accurate. I think in both, in the movie it makes it seem, it's giving it too much credit, but he almost seems a little more willing in the movie than he does in the book. In the book, he's definitely just like, please kill me, like just fucking murder me already, and it doesn't happen. And Lestat basically has to convince him to do this, and it's not for Louis at that point. It's just to get his plantation.
Yeah.
He's really just trying to get money. So Lestat's like the best con artist on the planet. Like, he's got no money. He's a former aristocrat who does not know how to not be rich. So he just swindles people.
Because I will say, like, they're alive, or they sort of like get these like broad strokes of their life or journey together. It's like, it's probably close to like 100 years or something, and they're mostly always rich. I'm just like, did y'all just like save? But you're saying that you're living very extravagantly, or just like, how are you just keeping this level of money other than just killing old rich hags?
I think it's a lot of theft and a lot of murder, honestly.
It's like, oh, all these people that just always happen to leave their money to us.
And I imagine, like, because it catches up to present day, like 94, I assume, or whenever the books are supposed to take place. It's like, that's around the time, like, you know, money is a lot easier to track, I imagine. Bet that would be harder for vampires later on.
Yeah,
vampires don't know how to use a debit card.
No. They're just like, what the fuck is this chip?
So there is actually, and I forget which book it is. It may be Queen of the Damned, or it may be The Vampire Armand. So Daniel, the interviewer, becomes like a main character within the series, and he and Armand end up in this weird relationship. And
Antonio Banderas' character?
Yeah, who is, fun fact, supposed to be a 16-year-old, at least in the book. He's like 16 or 17. And he's supposed to have like this adorable little cherub face, and everyone thinks he's too cute to be a murderer, and he is absolutely vicious in the books. Like, he just kills for shits and giggles.
Because I did do like some cursory reading about the series, and that was one of the things. Like, man, people just really want to fuck this.
Everybody wants Armand, and it's really fucking creepy, especially when they're like, "You're so young and innocent. Let's hook up." And I'm like,
That's weird.
That is predatory.
I mean, understandable when it's Antonio Banderas, but like,
yeah,
not when like weird
it's
Russian
creepy.
child, which like he's Russian in the book, but like he's Antonio Banderas in the movie. Like, it's a big change.
Listen, things happen.
And Antonio Banderas has the funniest wig in this movie.
It is a bad wig.
The wig is terrible.
Like, it's the only part about like the sort of the set and production that is like bad or like amateurish.
Yeah, for
because,
sure.
like, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, they grew their hair. Like, you can tell, like, reasonably grew their hair out or have like some light extensions.
Yeah.
But like Tony Banderas has like a flop wig and like
Party City wig.
and like
bad.
felt eyebrows or something.
But
It
yeah.
made him look a lot older than
Yes.
like it makes him like he looks older in this movie than he does now.
And he was like mid-30s in this movie.
I really thought that man was at least 45 when I was a child, and then when I found out how old he was, I was fucking baffled. Like, I don't get it. But, okay, so the Daniel and Armand thing, it actually, as far as, like, the modernity part of things, like, there's a whole part where, like, Armand just shows up wherever Daniel is, but he's got the dumbest demands. Like, he wakes him up and, like, throws a phone at him, and he's like, I don't know how to use this thing. Call Paris for me. And it turns it, they have the bitchiest fights. And at a certain point, he like throws the phone back and he's like, you call Paris, fuck you. And this is their whole dynamic for like, I think 15 years. Like, it's a long chunk of time.
Wow, like 15 years in universe or IRL?
Like, in universe.
Oh,
and
wow. That's fucking abusive.
it's crazy. And then Armand ends up turning him eventually. But it's like the most dramatic thing on the planet. And I kind of wish they had done more, like, with Daniel as a character, because he is really interesting, but I guess you don't really need him for the movie, like, as far as how it's framed. Like, you get that set up, and then he kind of...
He's more like a facilitator of the plot.
Yeah.
And also to be, like, you know, kind of, like, smacked around a little bit. I will say,
Little
him... I know this is broadly a horror movie, but I feel like there are some moments of, like, I guess, shock or, like, surprise when, like... There's some, like, really good jump scares when they do, like, super vampire speed. It's like, oh, fuck. That surprised me.
That was really cool. It's unexpected, and I think it works really well just because it is such a slow-paced movie that when you do get that random bit of speed, it really does fuck you up. I like that part. I wish they had done more with that as well, too. Like, there are moments where you see how uncanny these characters are, but I guess because they mostly keep to themselves and, like, each other... you don't really see how weird they are to humans.
Because there for a while, like after Claudia and Louis think they dispatched Lestat for the first time by making them drink dead people blood filled with, like, I don't know, mercury, and then setting the fucking Chicago on fire or whatever. Like they traveled the world for so long thinking like they're the only vampires in the world because like they don't run into any others until they meet Armand's vampire theater kids.
The worst theater kids.
I feel like, I mean, vampires are theater kids, but they just stay high school theater kids, but forever.
True.
Which
That said, the performance in the theater is one of my favorite parts just because it is so creepy and like it escalates so quickly.
I mean, fair. Like I would say my favorite portions of the film is during like the where they Paris. They're in like the vampire troops because that's some of the most interesting like set designs and like some of like the more like really uncanny parts because the whole thing with Armand is like he has a theater troupe which you know we're vampires. They have like a stage gimmick, but they basically kind of doing almost like snuff film plays, like very theatrical, very like lavish and pretty impressive like effects and like in universe, but also. They kind of use this as a way to kill people and be like, oh, this is part of our weird underground play. It'll mess you up and everybody because when the audience leads they're all like hushed and like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that whole scene is amazing. And in the book, like the Paris part goes on a bit longer. There's a lot more interaction. They get to know the troupe a little bit better, which is really cool. Most of them are awful.
I would have guessed.
But you do get to know the theater kids for better or worse. And then, yeah, there's still that massive, like, massacre at the end that kind of causes that severing.
Yeah.
And Armand is still awful. Like, he's just terrible.
There was a little catharsis when Louis decides to fuck up and, like, burn down the theater troupe. Because, like, what facilitates that is that Claudia is just, like, fed up with Louis', you know, shit or get off the pot mentality and just like I'm gonna turn this lady into a vampire so she'll be my weird parental figure and you can just fuck off to wherever. And then they get captured by the theater troops because they find out that Claudia killed the vampire, which is a big no in vampire world. No, that means no spray bottles. No.
And by spray bottles mean make them face the sun and turn into stone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they lock Claudia and the new vampire lady in a hole, and then they just turn them into Pompeii like figures. Like they're roasted alive. It's as fucked up as Claudia is. Like that's still a pretty brutal death.
It's a gruesome way to go. Like it's pretty hardcore.
Especially when you see like these two burnt out husks like of what looks like a woman and a child clinging to each other in death as they're just like burned alive.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised the movie actually went there because, you know, they built her up as such a important character. And it's like, and hearing you talk about how she's important to the series goes along, and I imagine death is more relative in this universe.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like Pat was saying, it is a pretty gnarly way to go out.
And plus, Louis was basically drag kicking and screaming, and with the intention of being entombed alive.
Yep.
Like he doesn't need food or water or air, so he's just gonna slowly go insane because he can't drink blood. And just like lock him in this iron coffin and cast a Montequillo and just like build him up in the wall. And then, but that's only for like 15 minutes, and Antonio Banderas busts him out.
Which just proves that he's the worst. Because that whole thing is just deliberately waiting until Claudia's out of the picture.
Yeah.
And then, oh no, I can't help. Sorry, I burned your weird girlfriend, child.
It's like, now we can be boyfriends.
Yeah, like, the worst game you could play. And yet, he did it.
It's like everyone is
What
just...
do you mean you're not into me?
It's like fuck you, dude. Because it's like I'm just gonna burn down your whole theater and all your little nerd friends. Watch me, bitch. He just kicks over all these like giant barrels of oil, and then when they're all night-nighting, sets them on fire. Just like vampires popping out of caskets, just like roasting alive. And he takes the sickle that was used in the stage part of their like performances and starts hacking them up. Pretty sick bits, especially when he fights the mirror man Santiago and cuts the bitch in half.
Santiago's the biggest pain in the ass. And honestly, I can't stand the character. So every time I watch him die, it's a delight. He's just the worst.
And plus, just the dude just doing like a mirror, just doing what you're doing in front of you, annoying.
Yeah.
Like he does the thing where he says what you're saying as you're saying it.
Ugh. Can we talk about how we're going to have to watch Queen of the Damned now?
Yes, and I'm excited. Come and get it.
No!
Which I will say, did not know that was a sequel to this movie until honestly like a few days ago.
Because Queen of the Damned is a part of the Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles series. I remember being in middle school when that came out, and like all of my like Gothic, Wiccan, vampire friends went ape shit. Feral over that movie.
Oh, God, yeah. So here's the thing. If you were within a certain age, I was going to say you loved it, but loved is a very strong word. Mm-hmm. You were into it regardless of the quality. Like, I didn't get to see it when it was in theaters because my town sucked, so I had to get it on DVD. So I didn't get to see it until home release. And I basically told myself while sitting down, I'm like, you're going to fucking love this movie or else. Then I got to the end and I'm like, you're going to love it. You can do it. You can do it. That movie is garbage. It's bad. And if you read the book, they may as well have set the book on fire. Like,
it is so vastly different. I mean, all adaptations take liberty with their source material, of course. But this one is a beast unto itself.
To be fair, there are like 20 plus point of views in that book. Like, she jumps from character to character and everybody gets like a little chapter. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to translate that book. I don't know why they chose that one. She apparently did not want them to do Queen of the Damned. She wanted them to do the second book because Queen of the Damned is third.
Yeah.
And they skipped the Vampire Lestat. And I think a lot of people said it's because it would have been too redundant because there is like interview overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're also getting a wildly because Lestat's not in the movie all that long.
He's
relatively.
Not.
Like more so like the first half, but especially like once they go to Europe, I mean, he fucks off until the very, very end.
When he comes back as a like shriveled up man in a chair.
Yeah. He is in more of the book at the beginning, like, because if I remember correctly, it's separated into parts. Like there are separate divisions, and all of part 1, I think half of part 2. Like he's around for a while before they get rid of him, and like he's a more important figure, but you're still not getting a lot of him like as a character. And the Vampire Lestat's really interesting. Like it's a really, I was gonna say good, and again that word is not it. It's it's a book, and
I mean, it's an entertaining book.
It's an interesting book, and it's cool to see a character in a completely different light because you get all of his personal history, why he's as dysfunctional as he is. You do kind of feel bad for him. He's an asshole, but you do feel bad for him.
You can see why. Obviously, you can't sympathize for what he did, but also you can see what led him to be this way.
Absolutely.
I also love how when they get to Europe and like all the other vampires were like,
fuck him.
yeah, fuck that dude. He's kind of an asshole.
The thing is, though, they don't convey it well enough in the movie, but they're all full of shit because he's got a history with all of them, and most of them are weirdly sexually charged. So
Yeah.
It's almost like vampires are just constantly horny. I feel like you're just horny for eternity.
they're horny, but Anne Rice was very much into my vampires are horny, but they don't fuck.
It's like we can't fuck.
Literally, there are chapters that are just like, we don't really need it. It's just kind of there.
God, it reminds me of, I don't know if you ever read this one, but it's a book that was co-created by Guillermo del Toro, The Strain.
I did, and it's a weird book.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But one of the things is that when the vampires turn into vampire, because there are very different vampire interpretations in The Strain. Like literally, they say part of the transformation is the dick and balls fall off. They atrophy and fall off.
Yeah. It's a whole thing.
I mean, like I like how. I mean, the book is weird. We'll just read.
Wasn't that like a mini series?
Yeah,
on TNT?
it was a show.
It was a show on FX. The show was fucking dumb. It was dumb. There's a point where the chief vampire man is like doing his weird Machiavellian plot, but then he tells his hacker man, slow down the internet. And he does.
What?
Cinema Grimoire watches The Strain.
No.
No, but like the show is dumb. The book is interesting, but it gets weird. But the one thing I will say, I like how monstrous they are in that iteration.
Oh, they're terrifying in that.
They're like brutal monsters, but then this is the most like elegant, very appealing version of vampires. They're well dressed and well spoken and like very alluring. And you realize you're just like, man, it's just these fucking assholes. Like there's 10 of us in the world, and we all hate each other.
Yeah, pretty much. The books are really interesting because you do get a lot of reflection on the interpersonal drama. It gets really gossipy in a way I really like.
Oh, I bet they're all hens.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's just like, who's sleeping with who? Who's living where? Why don't they like each other?
You know what? I think Anne Rice had her finger on the pulse with the gay community, because it's just a bunch of catty queens that all hate each other. They all fucked each other. And it's just like, man, this struggle.
Accurate. But again, they don't fuck. We have to keep mentioning that because Anne Rice is very adamant about the fact that they don't fuck.
I imagine when they go to try to fuck each other, it's just like two like ends of a magnet. It's going womp, womp. They just like bounce off each other.
She makes a point of like referring every time like Lestat thinks about his dick, which is way too often. Where like they'll talk about it and he's like, that one organ we don't need. And I'm like, please just say it's your penis.
I mean, because the bitch like does some weird shit with dicks later on. Real weird.
I think Anne Rice worked a lot of her kinks out in this series, and all of them are weird.
I think she needs to work out her therapy a little bit more, but...
There's the Vampire Armand. There are chapters that are just like flogging scenes. Like just chunks of that book are just like spankings and floggings.
Man. I'm just remembering Paul Bettany as the albino monk in the Vinci when he's just like whipping himself and like...
God.
It's that.
Damn, man, you freaky.
She also, I mean, she wrote actual erotica too, and it's like Sleeping Beauty themed erotica, and it's a lot of weird non-con shit that goes on. I mean, it's Sleeping Beauty. The sleeping part is heavily emphasized. There's, I think, 3 of them. It's like Beauty's Revenge. There's like, it's weird, but all of them have like beauty in the title, and it's, yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's gross. But Anne Rice had her things, and she stuck to those.
Man, she made a career out of being horny on Maine.
Well, and then she wrote a series about Jesus, so...
It's not just Christians too. They're really horny, but they can't fuck or won't.
I mean, she was very Catholic, and it tracks, so yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Sorry, Catholics.
To all our Catholic fans out there.
Completely visual bit that no one will be able to see.
JoJo does the sign of the cross. Listen, in
Spectacle, testicles, wallet, and what?
a long time AYCH fans will know we love visual bits on this network. I mean, but this is the introduction for our new listeners on the Extra channel. Listen, we know this is an audio format, but we love visual bits.
God.
And there's nothing better than us explaining a visual bit to you.
It is the most funny thing.
I mean, we had a whole episode not too long ago where we had a show and tell where we're just describing what we're showing to each other.
It's like, you can check out our Instagram. We got cool pictures of it.
It's commitment. It's a commitment to a bit.
Listen, we are a multimedia network. So
Fair.
why wouldn't we use the visual component of our franchise to complement the other? It's a second screen viewing. We're like AMC.
Fully immersive experience.
Well, I think that was a pretty rousing first episode for Cinema Grimoire. I had a great time talking about it. I had a good time watching the movie. And I was like, what do you think, Ash? First official #1 episode under your belt. How you feeling, podcaster?
I'm feeling good. This was a lot of fun. This was a really great discussion. I'm glad we were able to watch the movie together. I don't know if I want to say I'm sorry or not, but
don't be sorry.
I'd never be sorry.
Congratulations on surviving your first Anne Rice experience. And
hey, whenever we get the Queen of the Dam, I am hyped.
Queen of the Damned is such a different experience that it's like you got to pretend this movie doesn't exist and just start fresh.
I mean, that's kind of what they do with the movie.
That's essentially what they did, yeah.
An entirely different film. It's been a great fun. We hope you all enjoyed this very special first episode of this new series. And just a look ahead that we have even more episodes coming out throughout the month. That new from the new series for the Backlog Boys, which is our video game podcast, Muscle Orchestra, which is a wrestling show, and we have even more down the pipe. So just please keep an eye out for all those. But they'll be on your feeds of choice. Be looking out for those, and also you can just look forward to more Cinema Grimoire when that comes down your feed as well. So as we wrap up today, we'll just hit our plugs as usual. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever podcasts are found. Tell your friends, share us, let everyone know. It helps us out, keeps us visible, puts us in front of new people. We also appreciate you when you do it. You can follow me, Patrick, on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. John lost his name.
My name is Joe. You can follow me on Twitter at JONIOBY24 and John Nelson 12 on the Letterboxd.
And I'm Ash. You can find me on Twitter at BlurredGirlBlue or Instagram and Facebook at Glam and Ghoulish, where I sell polymer clay jewelry that I hand make. That's cute and it's spooky.
We will have links in the description of this episode for Ash's jewelry store as well. All right, until next time, we'll see you soon. Be careful and have a good night.